just going to talk a little bit now about the Coroner's Court and its relevance to nursing staff. And obviously, throughout the entire session, we've been looking at particular cases that have involved situations where people have died unexpectedly, and there's no doubt been an investigation from that. And for example, in the Mark McCabe, to name one, but you need to recognize that should you be involved in looking after a person in hospital who subsequently becomes a coroner's inquest, you may be required to provide verbal or oral evidence as a witness at that inquest, and that will be based on your documentation practices whilst looking after that patient in hospital. Now, the mere mention of the Coroner's Court and the thought of appearing before it might make, anyone very, very nervous. And whilst not a pleasant experience to give evidence in any court in relation to any matter, from a nursing perspective, the Coroner's Court or that jurisdiction is certainly not as threatening as, for example, if you were appearing before a disciplinary hearing for, in relation to the Healthcare Complaints Commission or APRA, or indeed if you are one of the defendants that are named in a professional negligence civil suit, for example. Remember, the Coroner's Court is not about apportioning blame. He is, or she is, about determining the facts that have led to the unexpected and untimely death of a particular patient. So, yeah, but nonetheless, it can be very, very stressful. And it is really important whenever you receive an in-house legal department call regarding that, that you're informed that you will have to be, you're likely to be called as a witness, that you seek legal advice. Now, I have talked about the New South Wales Nurses and Midwives Association, which is the industry union that offers free legal counsel to nursing staff. So again, always encourage you to do that. And I think we've looked at a couple of statements, if you like. For example, if you recall the RN Susan Gillies, who was the nurse cited in the assault case, you'll remember that in that case, an assistant in nursing was asked, there was lots of witness statements given forth, and her witness statement actually appeared in the documentation that was made public. And I think you'll recall that although it was factual and it did give a good account of the circumstances that led up to that nurse physically abusing that older client, we did make comment of the fact that, the nurse had obviously not sought legal advice, or she hadn't sought, appropriate means of preparing her factual statement really well. And, there was lots of spelling errors and so forth. So that's where, if you get legal advice, they will give you they can go over it with you. And remember, it's extremely important to get that statement correct, because it will be a trigger for your memory, and it will corroborate your written evidence, and then you can refresh your memory having looked at your statement if you're ever required to give oral evidence, whether it be in any court. But we're talking about the coroner's, a coronial inquest in this case. A really excellent little reading that does present some very timely advice for nurses in relation to the coroner's court is the Teng reading, and here it is here. The link is in your module, and it really does give you some practical tips. All right, so it gives you some tips on drafting or reviewing a statement and just what to expect. It comes from the Victorian jurisdiction, but all the tips are applicable to any coronial inquest and nursing staff in Australia. So give some practical tips in what to do. From a practical perspective, I think this is what, and it's a good summary of what we've been doing throughout this entire subject. It's, from a practice perspective, and this is, in your day-to-day life as a nurse, you're learning all the theory, the legal ramifications of what you do, the frameworks, the policies and guidelines, the standards for practice that are in place. And this is why you have to maintain this. Maintain accurate documentation, for ultimately this is what will be relied on if there are ever questions asked about your individual nursing practice. So documentation is mandatory to get that right. Also be aware and conversant with your health services policies and procedures, as this is the standard you will be tested against. This is especially pertinent for nurse unit managers and so on, but it's best, she makes the call that it is better to exceed that standard for practice. And here it is. For registered nurses, ensure you adhere to best practice, even if this is above the standard expected of you by your employer, because A, you will be an excellent role model, and B, if ever in the situation that you're asked about something or your conduct is scrutinized, you'll always come across as a very credible and important witness. So this is a really good reading, and some really good practical tips. Just finally, just some information in relation to highlighting the guidelines that are in place in New South Wales Health should a patient die and will be subsequently referred to the coroner. I've listed some of them here, but I think it more pertinent to just highlight the policy document. So here it is, and it is the New South Wales Health Policy on the coroner's cases. So again, the act or the statute that as a medical or health professional you're bound to adhere to, it's the Coroner's Act of 2009, and again, regardless if you're in Queensland or New South Wales, they'll all be very similar, but always check the policy and statute in your relevant state and territory. But just for the information, remembering in this subject's all about where to find information, and should a patient die and the circumstances, in health, where if it's a health related procedure and it's reportable, everything here. So guidelines for nursing and midwifery staff on coroner's cases dying in hospital. So general consideration, removal of surgical instruments, and so on. So it's all in section 8. So we'll scroll down to there. Forgive if you suffer from motion sickness. And there you are. These guidelines, and that's what I've just summarized for you on the PowerPoint essentially. Alright, so that if you're ever in the case where you're not quite sure, you can always find out by referring to your policy document. Alright, so that's the practical considerations. You've got a nice little case study that is highlighted in the module, so you can answer the questions and you'll be well prepared for any questions in relation to this aspect of the coroner. So that concludes information relating to the coroner, and yes, I hope you'll enjoy that, and remembering the main thing is knowing some of these important websites which will be useful to you.